Hello. Hey everyone. Happy Thursday. Just going to make sure. Hey, I'm going to make sure this is one thing is sometimes I need to make sure that this is going live. So if you are watching this, please say hello. Make sure because we can see the comments and say hi. Let us know where you're from. If you're watching this on replay later, then please put hashtag replay and say hello. Yeah.
Hey everyone. Happy Thursday. Just gonna make sure. Hey.
Oh, make sure this is one thing. Oh, we've got sound coming back. Is that you, Nicola?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Okay. No worries. So, guys, if you are watching, do say hello, say hi. Let us know that you're there, where you're watching from. It'd be great to see you all. So this is a new group for a new show. Hello. Ambition to Impact, and I want to welcome you, and I'm so excited about the first guest, who's become a great, I don't know what to call you, a great friend, but also just a great cohorted spirit of in terms of coaching and on the very similar, we deal with very similar situations, but in a different way as well. Cornwall.
Oh, I'm in Cornwall. Oh,
Cornwall.
All of Cornwall's here.
All of Cornwall's here. So, guys from Bristol, hi Bristol. There we go.
Southwest, aren't we?
Oh, very southwest, and I'm a southeaster. There we go. So we've got Nicola Buckley with getting her tea and coffee. And Nicola is a confidence and neuroscience expert who is here to talk about that difficult thing where you want to be actually just yourself. And it might be that you want to be direct and assertive. It might even mean that you are quite emotional, or people have called you out as being emotional, and you're wanting to lead in a corporate setting. Now, from a finance background, I know that there's a very, very clear-cut way of how we show up and how people feel they should show up as being really professional. And personally, I've had it. I've had it where I've been said, "Oh, are you okay?" Because I get what they call resting bitch face, basically. And that can come across in my voice because I can be quite direct and I just want to get to the point and I just want to know the answer. And sometimes I have to admit, I can feel really overwhelmed with a feeling, it's quite exhausting to almost be nice. That sounds horrible, doesn't it? But I just want the answer and I want to know it right now. And there's no horrible intention behind it. There's no, it's just me being direct. And that can sometimes be quite seen as being quite blunt. And I have to work quite hard sometimes to be just relaxed and adapt myself to other people who might feel quite sensitive to a blunt tone of voice. Especially if I'm in a rush.
You're not alone there. You're not alone at all.
So tell us, how can we lead, or how can we be showing up and not be exhausted and not feeling that overwhelm, but also not be seen as a bitch, basically?
Oh gosh, shall I start by introducing myself?
Yes.
So yes, we are co-coaching spirits and kindred and big supporters of each other. But I'm Nicola Buckley, and I do live down in Cornwall, so I'm very excited with the Southwest contingent that we've got here. And I help female leaders in the corporate world. I help them to find their fire. So I help them to get back that passion and that excitement and that feeling that they have that purpose that just gives them that energy and that motivation and that inspiration. And that helps them to have more impact and have more influence and more income. But it also means that they're a real force of change for good. So they're crusading and challenging and changing what needs to be changed in the corporate world. So I do that through group programs and one-to-one work and corporate programs as well. And it's really about, we can't necessarily change the corporate structure in the corporate world. It's very kind of patriarchal and it's very kind of male-led a lot of the time, especially the industries that I used to work in. But I can help. What can I do about that? I can help women in the corporate world really not just survive and get through it, and get to the top of that ladder, hard work rung by hard work rung, but I can actually help them thrive. So they have that real sense of self-belief and trusting themselves and speaking up more and using their intuition, and also to challenge how things are done, because things need to change and the world is changing. So let's change it. And it's all about a new way of leading. And I've seen women before, and I've coached thousands of women over the last few years, and I've worked with a lot of women. I had 16 years in corporate. And my two best, I use this example a lot, but my two best bosses were, my best and my worst boss were both women. And the one that was brilliant was really supportive, very nurturing, but would also challenge me and push me. So it's that really good, I felt very supported, but also I knew that I could push myself more. And she gave me kind of support to do that. But also my worst boss was effectively a woman that had become quite masculine. I'd kind of just really leaned into that, I need to be a bitch, I need to step over other people. And that had worked for her to a certain extent. I dreaded meetings with her. She never replied to an email. She never gave me time. I would go into meetings and I'd update her because that was the only time I could. And she would just lay into me. And we had this Monday afternoon, actually, at the end of the day. And all of us would stand outside and we would all discuss who was going to get it that day and who was going to get torn strips off in front of everyone. Because week by week, there'd always be one person. And I just think there's a different way to lead. There's a new way to lead that is more about really leading from your heart. And it's leading with empathy and compassion and vulnerability and courage, which doesn't sound like it fits in the corporate world, but with everything changing, this needs to change. And it's really for women to start empowering themselves, because I think women a lot of the time can hold themselves back and overgive and try to do too much and be everything to everyone. And it just means that...
I'm going to interrupt and jump in, because you're saying with all the changes going on, can you explain about the changes and how that has impacted about leading? Because actually, you're right, and especially in that corporate setting, we think about leading with empathy, leading with courage, and it's a lot as well, Brené Brown talks about. What are the changes that have really ramped this up?
So just everything through lockdown. So if I think of my clients now, so a lot of my clients are directors and CEOs, they're leading teams remotely. They haven't seen them for months. They might have new employees that they've never met. They don't have the opportunity to have those really casual corridor conversations that, some big decisions can get made over. And it's that sense of isolation. But for example, for a lot of their teams, these women that are looking after them and kind of leading them, they've also become like that point of contact. They've become that regular point of contact for people that are completely on their own, for example. Or they might have some people that are working later into the evening because they've got family responsibilities. So everyone's now, it's a slight difference for everyone in how they want to work now. Going back to work, do I want to go back in the office full time? Do I want to do part at home, part at work, or do I want to work completely from home? So it's almost like everything's thrown up in the air and everything's open to change. And for women have borne the brunt of lockdown more than ever before. So it's been women who are juggling more of childcare, work and working from home. It's women that have probably struggled more financially. It's women that have just taken on more and more and kind of stepped into that gap. So it's that if everything's changing, it's time to drive that change.
Because we've got men in the group as well. And so I'm wondering, how can men be really aware of not only what because I know that when I've worked as well, especially because it's a very male dominated industry, as you said, actually there's and excuse me guys about saying this, but sometimes a feminine energy, or at least not the high testosterone energy, that might not just be who you are as well. And that can actually mean that a lot of what you're talking about affects them, as well as not feeling like they sit very well. But equally, how do we, in terms of how we're being seen, and this actually sparks a really interesting conversation in my office, because I have a top floor office, and actually I have two people that work in different rooms that I sublet to. And I said, guys, what do you think of the word bitch, for instance?
Yeah.
And actually, and I said, because if I get what, and I have been told, you know, you're a bit too direct. And this was years ago, a bit too direct, a bit too blunt sometimes, and for a woman, you know, in a sense.
Yeah.
And I said, what would you do if you were called a bitch? And one of them, who he's a business owner, he's really in tune with self-awareness and things like that. And he said, well, to be honest, it would be that, come on, stop being such a whiny, like pull yourself up, get it together. And I suddenly realized what a different connotation it has for men versus women. But either way, it's like,
oh yes, yeah.
Either way, it's a lot about empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
So I think when you started asking the question, you were saying about what can men do. So this isn't just with women. There's part of this that's with women to kind of change where they are. And I do think women hold themselves back. And we just wrote a blog about it this week, that we don't speak up in meetings, or we're not going for the promotion, we're holding ourselves back. But I also think men have a big part in this as well. So really for men, it's very much about, there's two levels. There's kind of like a conscious bias and then a subconscious bias. And a subconscious bias is almost that sense of, you don't even know it's there. They're not even particularly meaning to say those things. It's just part of the heritage, part of how we've been raised, part of the framework. And that's not saying it's right or wrong, but the conscious bias, you're almost aware of it and you're saying it. But there's also that unconscious bias, which is actually, like you said, for a woman, or assuming if a woman goes off on maternity leave, that when they come back, that they're just going to be distracted, or they're not going to be as committed, or, you know, so that is that unconscious bias as well that goes within that. And I think for men that are within the corporate world, this isn't laying, you know, it's not laying it at their door. It's not their fault, but it's a collective thing to really change this now, so that there's more parity and there's more equality. And there isn't just that unconscious bias of, well, actually, if she goes off on maternity leave, when she comes back, we'll just put her into the same role, or a side role, or it's, well, that woman still has that same skill set, that woman still has that same commitment level. And if you can support her through that, she's going to probably have even more loyalty and more drive and more ambition. But if you create the help her, support her with that balance. So I don't think, and I was really clear about this when I wrote the blog, this isn't laying this at men's door. This is something that's happened over a long period of time, and it's something that's with all of us to change. And we just have different roles within that. For women, it's owning that this is my expertise, this is my knowledge, this is my impact, and owning that and pushing forward more with that, and speaking up in meetings and really knowing their impact and influence. But for men, it's that awareness of when they might be in a conversation that is sexist, they might be having a bit of banter that actually pits women down, or there might be a bit of a boys' network that your face fits a bit more in a particular industry or company if you're a man. It's that awareness of it. So yeah, it's definitely with both sexes to kind of start to change this. It's everyone's responsibility.
I was wondering, in terms of, because we've very much gone down a gender route as well, but so we've got some questions, and I know that this question is from one of the male members as well. So I was wondering, in terms of just, there's this overall need to please sometimes, and how we actually assert ourselves. I wonder if that is a gender-based issue. I know there is a gender-based issue, absolutely. But also, you just said about that confidence and having that support and that network. And I know sometimes there can be a variety of, especially as you said, over the past year, that has knocked our confidence overall, and how we can actually show up as ourselves confidently. The question, I'll give you the question actually that was sent over here, and I'll pop it up on the screen so everyone can see. So, I have spent a lifetime of pleasing others to win their approval. How do I change my mindset and find another way?
Such a good question. Yeah, such a good question. First thing is, like, thank you for asking the question. That's a huge one, especially from a man that's kind of opening yourself up to help, and that takes real courage. So just well done, and it's really appreciated. Where to start? So let's try and keep this simple. when we're in that mode of pleasing others, I call it's kind of like the difference between living externally and living internally. So when we maybe don't know ourselves as well as we can, we tend to live more externally. So we tend to live to please people, to seek approval, to seek just fitting in, just to be part of something, to feel that safeness, because we don't have that certainty and surety in ourselves. So the thing is almost like as a barometer of pleasing others, though, we can almost sense and know when we know when we get to the point, or just start to be aware of the point when it gets too much. When is the point where you feel like you're frustrated, that there's no time for you? When is the point when you feel resentful of the time that you're giving others? When is the point that you're just starting to really just feel a bit lost and a bit disillusioned because you're giving so much? And then it's really about starting to, rather than live externally, it's about then starting to live internally. So it's about reconnecting back to yourself. So it's really tuning back into how you feel. It's tuning back into what are your passions? What do you want? Where are your boundaries? What feels like too much for you? So this isn't necessarily a mindset thing per se. This is more about living more internally led rather than externally led. And a really brilliant thing just to make you aware of from a brain perspective. So we do a little bit of neuroscience here. From a noggin knowledge perspective, which is what I teach and coach as part of what I do, when you're in that people pleasing mode, you're just looking for that. I want that approval. I'm looking. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be singled out. I don't want to stand out. And actually, when you come to it, the truth about judgment is it's going on from a brain perspective all the time. If you're watching this or listening, you're judging me now. I'm judging Alex. She's judging me. It just happens. It's like blinking or breathing. It just subconsciously happens. It's just part of being a human. So if you take that on to the next step, if you're going to be judged anyway, if it's happening anyway, why not be judged for being yourself? And why not be judged for doing what you want? Because then you can be judged for standing proud and tall behind who you are and what's important to you. And that's when you start to live that more internally led life and you start to show up as your true self. But you can, if you're in that people pleasing mode, it's not really led by you, it's led by other people, and you're trying to second guess. And you're going to be judged anyway. So come back to, I'm going to be judged. So I'm going to be judged for being myself and showing up how I am and doing what I think is important to me.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because that's the thing about the brain. Yeah, I always say they're mental shortcuts, because from a performance perspective, and in theatre, actually stereotyping is something that you have to do, and because it narrows down the scope of the field of who you're playing and understanding characters. Yeah. But equally, it is what our brain does on a very quick judgment. Are they safe? I've got to place them down. It's why to some points, in a way, it can be very deeply rooted in things like racism and things like that, because people have been told some trait of a human being is unsafe, and that gets carried down the lines until it creates something bigger and completely an unbased, a foundless judgment. And things like that, because of one experience. And you see this in animals as well. Funnily enough, if a dog has had, and because I'm a dog owner, you're a dog owner,
dog mum,
love a dog mum, and but if they've ever had an experience, and I don't know if you've had this before, mine are very wary of small white dogs now, because a little terrier bit one of them a while ago, and now they jump at every time they see. Now, not that dog, we don't see that dog anymore, but every time there is that nervousness, and we do build that in. So almost a little bit off topic, but it is definitely that judgment layer that we bring in. So when we try to please people, it's also, as you say, a learned behavior. So in terms of how we can actually manage let go of that, let go of pleasing others, let go, but be effective as a professional. What do we really need to focus on?
So there's a couple of things here. The first thing is to kind of create time for you in your life. So reclaim your time, reclaim your energy. And that's in work and outside of work. So to have that more balance in life, to enjoy work and to kind of have that sense of purpose and passion, it tends to get drained when we're giving so much away and we are in that people pleasing mode. So the first thing is just have a look at your own diary. Super simple tip. Have a look at your diary, see what percentage of your diary is for you and what is for everyone else. And then think about where you would want it to get to. That's a super simple one. I work with all my clients on something called Feel Good Foundations. And that is as simple as it sounds, which is very much at the beginning of our work, we're going to make your day-to-day feel better. So you've got the energy and the time and the space to go into doing the deeper work that we do. And for a lot of them, it's getting back their loves and their passions. So for some of them, it's cooking. For some of them, it's baking. For some of them, it's painting, writing, reading. But having that balance outside of work sounds like such a simple thing. But you're starting with pleasing yourself. You're reclaiming your time. You're reclaiming your energy. The next part is you can also apply that in work. So obviously, from a work perspective, we don't completely own our diaries. If you're in a corporate world, there's going to be some pull on your diary from other people around you. But my client, a new client that I spoke to yesterday, she had so many things booked in to support her team, to be there to kind of give them moral support, to kind of be there to, just be there as a team together, because she's only just started managing quite a lot of them, that we went kind of looked through her diary and she's like, actually, a lot of these I don't need to be at. And also I want to delegate more and I want to empower them. And that's part of the process. So again, look at your work diary, be really honest with yourself. Are you in that meeting to have the impact and influence you want to? Or are you in that meeting because you feel that you need to be there because it's a team member that you're not sure they're going to say what you would say? Or that actually this is a slightly different area of the business that you don't know that well yet. So just be really honest with yourself, get back that control, and also set your boundaries. Set your boundaries of when you start your day and finish your day. And it's more important than ever now, because working from home just blurs boundaries. There's not that commute that's almost like a full stop at the end of the day and is the clear start to your day. So it's about setting those boundaries. And again, I've worked recently on a corporate contract, and for a lot of those women now, they're working harder because they're worried about being found out. They're taking their phone to the toilet, because what if the boss rings? It's like, you go to the toilet at work, you can have a lunch break, you can go for a walk at a point in the morning when you own your diary. So use it like an adult and do what you need to do. And it's just been really interesting seeing that the work from home, for many people, it's been great in a lot of ways, but for many people, they don't have those boundaries anymore. So set your boundaries. So to start with, to get away, stop changing that, start to change that people pleasing. Look at your diary, look at what you're doing for yourself, build in weekly non-negotiables that are specifically for you, that you feel good from. Do the same thing with your work diary, and also set those really clear boundaries. And generally the world of work, I know for me, when I had huge launches, you guarantee the week before something horrific would go wrong and we'd be working all hours. But there aren't that many things that happen. That doesn't mean you can't do it tomorrow. Yeah. And it's okay to have that time, and especially more than ever. And it's something I'm really passionate about as well, out of everything that's happened over the last year in lockdown, just from a brain point of view, like the brain uses so much more energy, uses up to 50% of our energy, and it uses more if we are making a lot of change, because the brain has to process it, understand it. It creates new neural connections, those are building. It's just really intensive. So just imagine, we get used to lockdown, we come out of lockdown, we then got vaccinations, and when's that going to happen? Working from home, how does that happen? What meetings am I having on Zoom? Actually, I'm getting really tired, as Zoom itself is really draining. So know that your brain is probably quite tired at the moment. So you probably need more rest, you probably need more recovery. We've been in our homes for a year. We've got really good at being in our homes. And so it's that anxiety as we come back out. What's it going to look like? How do I support myself through it?
And that comes out as well in the way we communicate with people as well. And it's really being aware of what you're putting out and how you affect other people, which is what we actually started at the beginning of the conversation and saying, because actually I did say, didn't I, that if I'm in a rush, or maybe if I'm tired, that's actually when I can be quite blunt, quite curt. Yeah. And I have to really watch myself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this all comes back to as well identity, and a huge part of what I teach and coach, I help my clients create this really compelling clarity around their self-identity. And you know, that question, like, or not that question, that statement, if you go on a date, you go to a job interview and you're like, oh, just be yourself, and you're like, I kind of hear it, but I don't really get it. I don't know what that means, but that's what I would essentially teach and coach. I'm going to teach and coach you the ins and outs of being yourself. And it's that identity. It's not about your identity at a certain grade or a salary level or job title. Like, who are you at your heart? What are your values? What do you believe? What's your language? How do you talk to yourself? What's your story been? And that all, knowing that, you become the world leading expert in yourself. And that's where true confidence is. It's not confidence in pleasing others. It's confidence because I know myself. Even if, you know, if the wheels come off, you've had one of those awful days, it's like you still have that innate sense of confidence. And you can come back to that. Even if in that moment you're having that wobble, and that self-identity just starts with simple things of, what do I love? What's important to me? Or something a bit more deep, like, what are my values and how do I want to show up in the world? So that role, like, who am I in that role? What do I want to be saying, thinking, feeling, doing? It's not a fake it till you make it, but you're kind of stepping into being that person consciously. If I want to be this, if I want to have this level of impact in this new role or in this role, I don't want to be speaking like that. I don't want to be reacting like that. Actually, I don't want to show up tired. So I'm going to really look after myself more. And it's all those things. It's consciously choosing who you are.
Yeah, I love that. Consciously choosing who you are.
Yeah.
And that is, when you said about having an interview, I hear this a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because you end up thinking, well, this is, I got to, you know, knowing if I'm going to fit in. Obviously, there's also that fear, like, I need to get a job, or even I need to get that client.
Yeah.
If it's a kind of a more an acquisition interview.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've got to make them like me. I've got to fit into their version of who I should be.
Yes.
And there is a huge risk to doing that. There's a huge risk, not only to your well-being, but also to actually the effectiveness of what you do.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of places do things like psychometric testing and things like that to make sure there's a culture fit.
Yeah.
But it's so and that's the thing, is letting go of that. It's harder, obviously, said than done, to let go of that fear. But yeah, there is a true, I mean, that's real presence, isn't it? When you have that sense of, this is who I am, this is what my values are, this is what sits well with me, and this is not what fundamentally you know, doesn't fit.
I call it, it's like the Marmite effect. And it's like, like with me, love me or hate me, that's your choice. That's not my business. You know, all I can do is be true to who I am, and I am now more than ever. Clients invest a lot of money to work with me and they haven't met me. They're all over the world, or they come on a retreat with me and haven't met me. It's like, you're a bit shorter, I thought, but you are you. So yeah, I get that a little bit.
Yeah, you've got to be who it is that people see. And again, in acting, we call this, they'd say, when you have your headshot done, you have to, you can't be over glamorized. You can't be overdone or made up, because if you walk into a casting room and they can't recognize you based on your photo, you won't get the job. You will be seen as like you've almost been fraudulent with who you're representing as yourself.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I think potentially, do you think we need to bring to the table?
I think if you think about like an interview scenario, though, an interview for me isn't just, I always remember when I was going to interviews, when I was at my most confident, I would just, it's almost like I didn't need the job. So if I'd been kind of headhunted for a new role and I'd go into it, I'd be so relaxed. I was completely myself, and I'd sit there and I'd be not only like sharing the answers and getting excited and kind of checking in with how I felt, but it also be, do I want to be here? Is this a role for me? Am I going to fit in this environment? What can I bring to this environment? So it's that sense of, like you said, if you're not yourself, so if you go again to an interview or you're not showing up as yourself at work, at some point it's like a little forest fire. It's going to pop up and it's just going to start burning, because you're like, you know, if you've pushed down your emotions for a long time, if you've not spoken up in meetings enough, if you get to your review and actually it's not what you want it to be because they've not seen you for who you really are, that it sounds harsh and it's said with love, but it's kind of with you, because you've spent so long, and you can't second guess and be who other people want you to be, because that leaves you with layers and layers to strip away. And we already have the layers. Clients that come to me, we strip away the layers of pressure and responsibility and exhaustion and years of pleasing everyone else. And like, who are you at your heart? Because that flows into everything that you do then. Your role at work, yes, the leader that you are, yes, but also if you're a mum or a dad, or if you're a dog mum or dad, and if you're a sister, brother, it flows into everything. It's almost like if you can be yourself at the heart of who you are, it leads into everything. Whereas if you're the opposite and you don't have that understanding, that's when you tend to not feel enough as well. So that then bleeds into everything. That means you don't feel enough in your role, so you might feel like an imposter. It means you maybe, like in your relationship, you're not quite yourself, because you just don't feel like you're worthy of that. It shows up everywhere. So it's almost like we fill that gap of you not knowing yourself and not feeling enough by that understanding of who you are. And that is innate confidence. It's almost genderless then, because it's like, this is you, without the labels, without the roles, without anything else, stripped back at your heart. This is who you are.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. And I was do you know what? You just answered my last question as well, which was brilliant. Because I was thinking, oh, wow. But yeah, being unapologetically you. And I mean, we called this about how to lead without being a bitch, but it's actually, if someone is viewing you potentially as a bitch, or as difficult or blunt or something like that, then as long as as long as you're leading from that place of actually that really is you, and it's not something else that's going on with you.
Yeah, I think there's two parts of it. I think it's almost you having more self-awareness, which in the corporate world can be difficult when you're really busy, but that's something that I think is more and more prevalent. That self-awareness of, am I being incredibly direct and a bit of a bitch? Am I being that because that's what I see that I need to do to get on? Like I said, one of my worst bosses was a woman, and there's no other way to kind of describe her. I don't like the word. But it's almost like she'd come from a background where she'd been in male-dominated industry, she'd been in different countries. And I think for her, it's just who she felt she needed to be to get on, to have that impact and influence. It's like, but it came across in a very, it wasn't even assertive, it was aggressive. It was just too much. And she'd lost all the brilliant traits of being a woman, which is that intuition and nurture and empathy that are incredibly powerful, especially for leading. So I think it's that self-reflection and self-awareness. Is this actually who I am? Am I doing this to fit in? Am I doing it to please others, as the question earlier? Am I doing it for approval? And that, that dramatic impact, I'm going to be noticed. People are going to sit up and take notice because I'm dramatic in it, being a bitch.
Yeah.
Or is it actually that, you maybe that is part of you, but maybe there's also an element you're not looking after yourself in the best possible way. So you're spending a lot of your time in reaction mode and not really being yourself because you're tired, because you're rushed, because you're late, because you're under pressure. It's again that self-awareness that if I can support myself and I can just show up at being the best that I am, and this brilliant version of me, is that actually means that I've looked after myself. So I'm not in a rush. I have slept, and I have eaten well, and I have looked after my mental health. So I'm going to show up with that impact and influence that I don't need to be a bitch, because I'm just feeling great. I've got this energy, and I've got this wow energy that just draws people in. So a couple of comments. Hollywood has a lot to answer for, the go-getter woman. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of Prada, right? So
the brutal one. Yeah. And the fear of judgment, as I was just reading back from earlier as well, fear of judgment almost overshadowing the quality of work. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes you really do hold yourself back from that fear. But yeah, Hollywood, there is that thing, and that's I remember those were the films that I loved. Like and I'm still really drawn to these kinds of women, and I think there is very much that image, because almost my mum was a bit like she would come, at the end of sports day, she would have gotten down from train from London, and she'd be in like her jacket, suit and stilettos wobbling over the fields. And I remember watching those 80s movies, like, you know, with the shoulder pad jackets and everything like that. And there was very much like that. You've got to make a point and prove and things in. Just had a comment as well. This has been so surprising. I always struggled in a corporate environment because I didn't fit in. I love the idea of being unapologetically you, irrespective of what they tried to mold you into. Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, on that note, we'll draw us in to a final close. But I'm going to ask if we had, say, an action to take from this call, what would the core action be?
It's such a simple one, but I think pretty much everyone I work with starts with this, and it's just get back to you. So what do I mean by that? And you're finding that fire, that passion, that excitement is in your feelings. And it's like, Nick, you're not saying anything. So a really simple way to start connect back to you, to come back home to who you are, to kind of stop living externally, to start living more internally. That's just checking in with yourself every day and ask yourself, how do I feel today? What is going on for me today? What do I need today? So it starts with that connection with yourself. It starts with that understanding, acknowledging, awareness of how you feel, because that's where everything flows from.
Do you know what I think? Would another way of putting that be put yourself first for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I see so many women that are just lost in that hamster wheel kind of busyness. Almost Brené Brown call it a badge of honor, like a form of numbing. I don't want to face up to my life. I'm going to numb it by being so busy and so brilliantly busy with so many amazing things that I'm not really in it. And it is that putting yourself first, but doing that from a feeling led point of view, like, you know, intuitively. I call it, if it helps, I call it your cup of tea voice. So that voice of, if you were sat here with me now, Alex, I said to you, what do you want to drink? You would just know, inherently, like, oh, just a fancy cup of tea or fancy coffee, whatever it is, you would know. And it's just that same voice on a bigger scale. It's just nurturing it and just drawing it out and just giving yourself permission to voice it, and then start to listen to it more and more.
Amazing. Yeah, give yourself that permission, because also once you give yourself that permission, it's not just about you. That affects everyone in your life. And everything that you bring, as you were saying, everything that you bring to the table and the way that you deliver your work, and not just at work, it's your family, your friends, everything. Is when, if you put yourself first, even at the beginning of the day, and check in.
You demonstrate your value to everyone then. This is my value. Like, I'm not working past that time because I know my value, I know my worth. And you're living and breathing your own value then, which is just incredibly powerful to, like, no, actually, you know, if again, my client yesterday is just like, you know, taking on more projects and a couple of teams now and stuff. She's got this role that's started, you know, here, and it's just expanded and expanded. And for her, you know, what point does she say no? What point does she say that's enough? Like, my value and worth, you want me to do a brilliant job and go deep and get in depth, I can't do that if I'm spread too thin. So reflect your own value and worth through what you do.
Absolutely. I love that. Live and breathe the value. Oh, it's fantastic. So, Nicola, where can we find more of you, and how do we connect with you?
Yes, so if you, I'm hanging out a lot more on LinkedIn these days, so you can come on over to there and find me as Nicola Buckley, or I've got a free group which is Find Your Fire, so you can come on over to Facebook, and I've also got a masterclass that I'll be running, I think ongoing monthly, which is the Empowered Corporate Empath. So you just add me on LinkedIn and just follow me from there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting to us. And everyone, do connect with Nicola, find her, and let us know what your biggest takeaway was from this session. That's what we're going to be doing each week, is actually, if you have a question prior, then I will bring it to the table with our guests. So thank you as well to the person, I won't call you out by name, but thank you so much for the question that was brought up, that was emailed over this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicola.
You're very welcome.
Cheers.